2 years ago, a much skinnier Brodie made a video on the problem of KDE virtual workspaces. The fact that they are virtual workspaces and not virtual monitors. What do I mean by that? So, on KDE, if you switch to, let's say, Workspace 2, all of your monitors switch to Workspace 2. Now, if you're used to that model, hey, it makes perfect sense. However, on basically every window manager, on desktop environments like Cosmic, on what I'm using right now, Neri, if I go to Workspace 2 on my main monitor, my secondary monitor stays on Workspace 1. My third monitor stays on Workspace 1. The only one that changes is the main monitor. And the exact same thing happens if I go to Workspace 2 on Monitor 2. Monitor 2 changes, Monitor 1 doesn't, and Monitor 3 doesn't. This gives you the flexibility to dynamically change some of the things that are visible on your system, but treat other things as effectively static. One thing I use this for all of the time. When I'm recording a video, I have OBS on my second monitor. OBS always stays there. I have a file manager there just to make sure things are being recorded properly. All of that just stays there. But I can swap around on my main monitor as much as I want, and OBS, it always stays visible off to the side, so I don't need to worry about, like, pinning it to the screen or anything weird like that. It's just always there. When I'm researching for a video, I often have my notes on my second monitor and the research on the main monitor. So if I want to have multiple browser windows open and then swap between the workspaces, I can do that and the notes never move. Or when I'm recording video like right now, I have my notes on my third monitor and I can just always look at them and nothing changes on that monitor. They're always visible regardless of what I do on the main monitor. This is a really useful feature and is pretty much the main reason why I stopped using KDE. I cannot use an environment that doesn't have this feature. But it made perfect sense why it worked the way it did, because this problem was first reported back in 2005. Since then, there have been a bunch of duplicates, but back in 2005, far less people had multiple monitors, and if you're on a single monitor system, it doesn't matter. If you're using a laptop today, it doesn't matter. It only matters on multi-monitor systems. Over the years, there have been a number of attempts at trying to resolve this problem, albeit some of them were not necessarily complete solutions. For example, this one here, add virtual desktops only on primary, which was highlighted in This Week in KDE by Nate Graham sometime last year. As it says here, virtual desktops only on primary. This is what we call in the industry a hack. So it was an improvement over what was already there. What it did is the main monitor, your primary monitor, this could independently swap its workspace. But monitor 2, monitor 3, monitor 4, so on and so forth, all of those additional monitors were treated as one workspace. So, for most use cases, this was fine, but it was not a complete solution. But this did get merged, and it did make KDE considerably more useful. However, just a few months ago, a new set of patches came along, a new set of patches actually addressing the problem. Virtual desktops, add per output desktops, and we have a bit of a video demo here, so let's take a look. Right now, this is the way it works, just normally on KDE with nothing enabled. And then, if we go and enable something called switch desktops independently for each screen, this is swapping independently. And also, that is swapping independently. This is the solution. Also works for touchpads if you like touchpads as well. This is the solution. I am not here to advocate for this. It's already been merged. This is coming in the next major version of Plasma. After 21 years, finally, KDE is vastly more usable, and it's not going to annoy me trying to use this environment. And as is the case always with KDE, it's toggleable, you don't have to use it. If you like the traditional model, it's still there. Now, the dev who made this, they might not sound familiar, and there's a very good reason for that. This is not an established KDE developer. In fact, this is someone who openly says they don't really use KDE that much, they just saw this as an interesting challenge to work on. With that being said, we do exist in the year of 2026, and that's going to obviously raise alarm bells. New developer, no one's heard of them, what's going on here? You can see where I'm going with this. What about AI usage? Now, KDE doesn't have any sort of proper established AI policy. However, they did disclose the way it was used, and most importantly, none of the code was generated with AI. OpenAI Codex was used in the following way. I used it to generate a quick prototype to give me an idea of where to start. The prototype was much more limited, and I rewrote it from scratch. Assuming you believe them, and nothing I've seen indicates that they are lying here, fair enough. I used it to help me with debugging, / understanding some of the stuff new to me, e.g. how does value get to QML, Wayland protocols, understanding crashes, because this is not an established KDE developer, this is someone who basically just started with this work. This is how they get involved in KDE. I used it to review the code before submitting it. In addition to manually reviewing it myself, it caught a few minor issues. This is the way that a lot of projects are using it. You'll see this in projects like systemd, and pretty much every major project at this point probably uses it somewhere in their pipeline. Also used it to write a touchpad simulator patch that I used for testing the touchpad gestures, but this code was not submitted, this was just used locally. This person is not an established C++ programmer. They are a programmer. They've been working as a full-time PHP programmer for 6 years. So it is someone who is an established developer, who understands some level of software engineering, who knows how to write code, but did not have the desire or the time to learn C++. Now, whether or not you think any of this is a bad thing, have the discussion in the comment section. Of the ways that AI could be used, this, I think, is some of the least egregious ways. Whilst you can see how it works from the demo, there are some caveats if you are used to a system like this. It may not do every single little thing you are used to from whichever window manager you happen to be using. This is 99% of the functionality, and it's totally fine for me. But let's get into it. Each screen can show any virtual desktop one at a time. This isn't a tag-based system like a DWM or an Awesome WM or anything else like that, but it never claimed to be. If you like your tag-based system where you can merge different workspaces together, that's not what this is. Each window belongs to one screen, even if it spans multiple screens, and to any number of virtual desktops. The window is visible if its screen shows one of the virtual desktops that the window belongs to. This is just how KDE handles virtual workspaces. Maybe things could be changed here, I just don't really see any reason to do so. Switching desktops via keyboard shortcuts and most other methods affects the currently active screen. So some window managers have the option to change the workspace on your secondary monitor or your third monitor whilst you're on the main screen. That's not the case here. In KDE, all of the shortcuts affect the currently active screen. This again goes into the way that Plasma's always handled its virtual workspaces. This is something which I think could be added in the future and would be nice. It's not something I typically use myself, but there's no reason why it couldn't be done. At this point, the work is already split up across 7 different merge requests, so it's already a complicated web of things to make sure is working. I think just worrying about the basic use case initially is a good place to start. Please note the functionality implemented by this merge request does not work like Hyperland, etc., where workspace is separate for each screen and switching to workspace activates its screen as well. This is not because I'm not aware of the alternative behavior, but because I prefer it the way I implemented it. I'm aware that some/many people are going to be disappointed by that, but there is no right way that is going to satisfy everyone. Had I implemented it the Hyperland way, I disappoint different people. This is a confusing comment because I had to think about it for a bit. Basically, what's happening here, and you probably don't even realize that you would even care about this because it's a very specific feature. When you use this, so there is desktop 1, desktop 2, desktop 3. You have desktop 1, desktop 2, and desktop 3 on both of the monitors, but they are independent desktop 1, 2, and 3. So if you like the idea of having 1, 2, and 3 on, let's say, your main monitor, and then 4, 5, and 6 on your secondary monitor, that is something you currently technically cannot do. There might be some API hacks you can do with plugins to make things work, but the way it's configured and set up in KDE right now, 1, 2, and 3, so on and so forth, however many you want to have, on both of your monitors. For me, I think that's totally fine, but I do know why you'd want it the other way. This issue was raised in the comments. Hi, thanks for this merge request. I had also implemented a version of it. This was done about 2 months ago. So, out of nowhere, after 21 years, 2 people completely independently started working on the exact same problem. Looking through the video though, I got concerned. This merge request doesn't seem to give a way to bind a screen to a desktop, does it? The way per screen desktop feature is typically used is for people switch immediately to a desktop as a screen by pressing a shortcut bound to the desktop, but in your video, it seems like a desktop still takes multiple screens, it just allows you to show different parts of different desktops on different screens. To elaborate, the typical workflow you have is, let's say you have desktops 1, 3, and 5 to the left screen, desktops 2, 4, and 6 to the right screen, and then you press switch to desktop 2, which switches you to the screen with apps on desktop 2. Your focus gets moved to the left screen, which now shows apps from that desktop, while on the right screen, you still see apps from desktop 2. I understand this workflow, and I have used this a number of times in the past. Back when I was on i3, for example, I used to have it so my notes were on probably at desktop 7, and then something else was on desktop 8 on my third monitor, and then I could immediately jump over to those different monitors by using the hotkey to jump to that desktop. Now, there are other ways you can get around it, but if that specific workflow is what you're trying to do, that cannot, at least yet, without some hacks, be done. I think it is very much worth considering that as a feature, because some people like to have a specific desktop number for specific kinds of applications, like Discord always goes on workspace 4, and that's always located on the second monitor, things like that. But I don't think it is worth blocking the functionality on adding that additional behavior. I think for most people, just having independent workspaces is enough to go with. Someone else notes, the behavior is pretty much the same as the behavior Enlightenment has had for years, although the design is slightly different, and they essentially have a virtual desktop manager per screen, so you could have different numbers of columns and rows per screen. In practice, I've never used that, so I was going to implement it in a similar way to you. It would be kind of neat to have a custom tile, there's the tiling editor in KDE, a custom tiling layout per workspace, per monitor. That actually would make the feature quite a bit more useful. Now, there's a bunch of things to make the tiling editor more useful, but that's a step along the way. There are a bunch of weird niche edge use cases for things that you could add to this functionality, and you could have this discussion basically until Plasma 7 comes out. I just don't think it makes any sense to delay this based on all of these random little things you might want to add, because first things first, you have to know if this is something people actually care about. Do the basic functionality, and then from there, let people make additional bug reports if people say, hey, maybe it would be useful to have this thing as well, then that discussion can take place. I know there's gonna be at least one person who asks, one person who cares. This does only work on the Wayland side. Now, to be fair, Plasma is dropping the X11 side within a few versions, so it won't be a problem for long. But I know there are still some people left on the X11 version. As with all code changes, this was not without its bugs along the way. After my monitors turned off from inactivity and I woke them up, all the windows on my primary monitor got placed on two desktops at the same time. I know my primary monitor takes a bit to wake up compared to my secondary monitor, so my theory is the windows get placed on secondary, which was on another virtual desktop, and then placed again on primary after it finally turned on, and that caused the windows to get placed on both desktops. I don't know though, that's just a theory. This has since been resolved, but this is the point of user testing. Also, it kinda broke the screenshot tool. The full screen screenshot editor seems to spawn all of its windows on the same virtual desktop on all displays, instead of spawning it on the virtual desktop of the display it's placed in, causing all of the displays to switch to the desktop of the active display, the one where the mouse is. So if you're on, let's say, desktop 1 on monitor 1, and then desktop 2 on monitor 2, if you are currently active on monitor 1, when you did a full screen screenshot, it would swap monitor 2 over to desktop 1 like the main monitor is. Again, also been fixed. Then there is a whole can of worms when it comes to KDE activities, a feature that everyone kind of forget exists. Now, as it currently stands, this merge request implements per output screens virtual desktops, not activities. If you switch activities, it affects all outputs as before. The only change is that activities remember their last desktop separately for each output instead of a single global one. And that's the way it's probably always going to work. Activities are a weird feature. I'm honestly surprised they're even still in KDE at this point. I don't know anyone who uses them. They behave weirdly. They're not really super well explained. I don't really get the point of them. And yes, before anybody asks about it, it does work correctly with the cube. There is a patch to make it function properly. Following the merger, the developer said this: I put roughly 200 hours into this, largely due to not being familiar with the codebase and technologies involved beforehand, so it's great to see it merged. Big thank you to everyone who reviewed the changes, reported bugs, answered questions, or otherwise helped. Now, it is worth noting that there is technically a bug bounty for this, so I don't know how serious it was. If you want to go and claim the bug bounty, seems like free money. Here's the thing, right? I'm currently using Neri, but Plasma 6.7 is getting really, really tempting, right? You had the recent VRAM changes from Valve, so now games get prioritized when they're running, so you should theoretically get less stutters if VRAM was going to system memory. Now it shouldn't be. Then we have things like the, people don't even remember this, there's a revival of Oxygen being done. So if you like the look of KDE 4, that is being brought into Plasma 6. Obviously not exactly the same, but fitting within Plasma 6, and frankly, I think it looks really, really good. Then you obviously have the changes we talked about today, and if I merge that with something like Carousel, which is scrolling within Plasma, man, KDE becomes really, really compelling. But let me know your thoughts. As I've said, I think KDE right now is on a generational run. There is a reason it is massively growing in popularity. Things like this. Things being done that people actually want to see. And I'm all for it. So let me know your thoughts down below. Is this something you're going to use? Do you prefer the older model? And are you going to keep using it? I'd love to know. So go like the video, go subscribe as well. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon Scribes Daily Bearer Pay link in the description. down below. That's going to be it for me, and I'm not joking. I will be trying out 6.7.
Something like this.